All right. Okay. Hi. Um, Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 434th meeting of the New York Comics and Picture Story Symposium. Uh, Sorry, letting in some people here. Okay. The symposium is a ongoing weekly series of artist talks. They're always free and open to the public, on the subject of comics, visual narratives, picture stories of any sort. Um, It was founded over a decade ago by Ben Catcher, who came up with this idea to offer things outside of an institution where people could share their ideas and have a free-form setting to do so. It receives funding for the presenters from the Will and Ann Eisner Family Foundation and the New School. Um, and as I mentioned, the talks are completely open to the artist. They can give insight into their practice however they wish and choose whatever format they want. So it's a very kind of open, direct, kind of intimate way of hearing about people's work. And there's also a direct way to interact with the artist in the Q&A afterwards. So I invite everyone to think about questions as we have the talk today, and then you can ask your questions there at the end. Also, all of these talks are recorded these days and are put online on a YouTube New York Comics Symposium page. So this is a really amazing resource because you can go through all the past talks that were done online, um, and learn about all these wonderful practices and thoughts that people have connected to comics and picture stories. So I highly recommend you dive into that. My name is Lily Correa. I'm one of the organizers this spring, along with Ben Catcher, Austin English, and Bill Karlopoulos. We are very honored and excited to have Clyde Petersen be part of the spring symposium, or sorry, the fall symposium. I really love Clyde's work and am very much looking forward to this talk, which is titled Sneaking into Galleries and Museums with Clyde Petersen. I'm going to read Clyde's bio and then I will hand it over to him. Clyde Petersen, he is a transgender Northwest artist working in film, animation, music, and installation. He recreates lost worlds and documents cultures largely erased by AIDS, capitalism, and gentrification. He works to offer alternate, more equitable realities and futures through the re-examination of overlooked histories. His work is slow and patient, animating only a few seconds of film a day, gathering new oral histories and building scale model worlds to tell stories in. Clyde is the director of Torrey Pines, a stop-motion animated feature film with a live score that toured the world from 2016 to 2018. Torrey Pines is an autobiographical film about growing up with a schizophrenic mother as a queer youth in the early 90s. Even Hell Has Its Heroes, his documentary about the legendary Seattle band Earth, was shot entirely on Super 8 film. Clyde is currently working on Our Forbidden Country, a stop-motion animated film about transmasculine identity and its place within the world of gay cruising. Clyde's solo exhibitions often feature life-size replicas of objects and nature as large-scale installations, um, intended to draw viewers into the landscape of his films. Made entirely of cardboard, these landscapes fill the room and surround his film projections. Clyde has been the recipient of many awards, including a 2025 Creative Capital Grant to work on Our Forbidden Country. His work has been featured in museums, galleries, DIY spaces, and film festivals around the world. So, we'll be doing a Q&A again at the end of the talk, so hold your questions in mind. You can also enter them into the chat whenever you want. We can get to them after. Just think of it as this kind of like fluid conversation you get to have after the presentation. And with that, I will hand it over to Clyde.
Thanks, Lily. Hello, welcome. See some familiar faces in this crowd. Thanks so much for coming. Thanks so much for coming to the strangers as well. Yeah, my name's Clyde Petersen. I'm calling in today from the Pacific Northwest, from a small island about 20 miles south of the Canadian border. Calling in here from my animation studio. This is my multiplane in the background that I animate on. Bunch of art supplies everywhere, old merchandise, you know, the life of an artist living in piles of old merch. Uh, some books and tapes and stuff, but welcome to my studio. As Lily said, I'm a working artist. I primarily reside in the world of animation and music these days, but I've lived in lots of other worlds too. Um, I made a PowerPoint presentation for you all today to show you take you on a photographic journey of my art adventure thus far. Um, I would say the theme of today's talk, besides sneaking into galleries and museums, is community and uh, the way making art. You can make art in a void, but it might not go where you want it to go. So a lot of my work um, has been seen in spaces that I would identify as community spaces. And when I was thinking about this particular topic, like in conversation, in relationship to comics, particularly, uh, it really, I reflected on how, primarily as a filmmaker, there's kind of a gatekeeping wall up against certain kinds of art forms within like institutions of art and within gallery formats and museums. And so uh, a lot of my time and energy has gone into like thinking about how to enter into those spaces as like a more community-driven artist, as a working class person, as a person who didn't like know how to get a gallery, how to get a museum show. So I'm gonna fire off this PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully it'll work. And just show you a little bit about my work. Feel free to ask me any questions at the end. Thank you so much for coming. Okay, here we go. Share screen. You can do it. Okay. Sneaking into galleries and museums with Clyde Petersen. It all began long ago. This is a photo probably from like, I don't know, 2001. Um, I was probably 21 or 22 in this picture, and I was a roadie for a lot of bands. I was on tour. I grew up in Seattle. I went to high school in Seattle. And then I ended up going to college at Western Washington University in Bellingham and becoming a townie and living in a house full of artists. And that's where I really started to like learn what it meant to be an artist outside of college, outside of institutions, just in a house with like a lot of creative folks. After I finished school, I climbed in a tour van and I just toured for like 20 years with lots of different bands, working for like $50 a day, driving the van or carrying the merch or setting up gear, sometimes playing the shows, often just being a roadie. That was kind of my early entry point into like arts and travel and all kinds of art spaces around the world, seeing what was possible, seeing like where artists were like welcomed into, what kind of places you could play at. Did a lot of touring with a person named Laura Veers. Um, for many years, she took me on my first like European tour. I got to open for her a lot of times. I was also like a roadie and a tour manager for her, so I was working all the different lanes at the same time. Um, while I was doing that work, driving, playing, roadieing, tour managing, I was also often with a camera in my hand. So I was always just documenting for fun. I had this little Super 8 camera. I just loved it so much. And I would just set it on single frame and just take single photos like on tours for like thousands of photos. And then later I would show them to the bands and they'd be like, whoa, and be this like crazy frenetic, like the entire tour in 3 minutes. And on one occasion, I did that with Laura Veers, and they were like, "Do you think we could like use this for a music video?" And they I got to sell a video to None Such Records, and that was kind of my like entry point into being like, "Oh, you could take this hobby and like pay bills with it." So I started making like tons of music videos, not knowing what I was doing at all. Just threw myself into it. Um, and threw myself into like learning how to animate. For about 6 months, I worked in a post-production house in Seattle, and the job was like really, really not my favorite job. I was just um like checking the mall addresses for like 90 different Benbridge jeweler ads for Christmas diamond ads as like an assistant, and going on like 40 coffee runs a day. And next door, my friend Britta was an animator for a different production company, and we would both be staying late, and I would be like miserable, just being like, ugh, Mall 47 of the Benbridge jeweler ads. Like, is this the right address? Is the text on screen perfect? And then she'd be like setting stuff on fire next door, and I was like, "Are you okay?" Because I'd smell smoke, and she'd be like, "I'm fine," and I'd be like, "What are you doing?" And then slowly, I just started being pulled over there and like staying late after work to help her do animations and like learn how to animate. So I made a lot of music videos. Um, I worked with a lot of community members and friends doing animations. This is a situation where I like turned this writer named Ivan Coyote into a photographic puppet because they live in Canada, so I wasn't like able to work with them for a long time. So I was like, we'll make puppets of you. So we did a photo shoot in the yard, got a lot of photos, cut them out, and I was able to animate them as puppets, as photo puppets. Uh, Simultaneously, I was also making zines because it was the 90s, and it was kind of, pre the beginning of the internet, but mostly we were exchanging a lot of information through paper products and CDRs. So I started making a zine called In Your Room, and I interviewed bands and drew comics, and I started drawing comics based on the tours we were doing these little tour journals. I would shoot Polaroids of the shows, and then later I would draw them because I didn't really have time to like draw a still life while touring. And I'm really glad that I drew these because there's so many things I just don't remember from tours because it's like such a full-time job. It's nice to revisit them. So, yeah, when I was thinking about this talk, I was like, okay, comics. I kind of started in comics. As time went on, my zines got like kind of more and more elaborate. You can kind of tell which like technology has progressed or like what tech access I have. Like suddenly I have access to screen printing and a CD burner, and I started making music compilations to go in the back of my zines. And then suddenly I was like, oh, you can get an envelope for the CDs. You can just see like the progression of like me learning how to do anything whatsoever in the world pre-internet. I learned there were plastic slip covers and you could use them and put the CDs in the back. And I was always making these music compilations with like bands I had toured with, or like this one's like this is a compilation of Southeast bands I had met on tours. And I'd been like, hey, I'm making a comp. You want to send in a track? And then the stories in the zine are about touring or living in the Southeast. So this is a zine I made when I was living with Nate Powell, who's a comics artist in Bloomington, way back in the freezing cold, moldy house days. Okay, so eventually, um, as I toured and met more and more bands and just worked with more and more people, I also, would be home for short periods of time. And when I was home, folks would come through on tour and they would stay at my house. Uh, and we would go to the show together, or I would help set up the show and host them and we'd have breakfast and then they'd go off to their next show. And um, something that had changed in my life during this time is I had built a wooden rowboat with the help of some friends when I was living in Florida. And I had taken it back to Seattle and I started taking my friends out boating when they were like the morning after their show. I'd be like, oh, do you guys want to go like boating in the Arboretum before you have to leave town? You could have a little adventure before you get back on the highway to your next show. So suddenly I realized that like I had all these amazing friends in bands that were going boating with me. And I was like, I'm gonna I'm gonna make a TV show of these friends. I'm gonna ask them if they want to like play songs in the boat in the Arboretum. And so I got some, it was the beginning of GoPro cameras, and I got like a portable 8-track recorder and two GoPros and like two like clip-on mounts for them and some little microphones and a hydrophone to record stuff underwater. And we hit the Arboretum and we hit the Arboretum for like 5 years straight. This was just a passion project and we'd go out and film, take bands out, and then I accidentally made like I think there's 30 episodes of this show, and it features all kinds of magical people. Occasionally, we couldn't get out in the arboretum. I'd just be like, "Oh, just let's just go in the backyard into the boat." We did a night shoot once that was quite scary, and we got totally freaked out by a beaver who was slapping its tail at us. Hosted a lot of amazing folks. So, rewind. Okay, so I made this show. All the while, I'm still like a very DIY artist. I'm still like not really like I haven't crossed the threshold into like galleries or museums or any of the things that might like financially sustain my life as an artist. I'm still like still roadieing, still working in restaurants, still working in the movie theaters, still doing post-production stuff and just like freelance hustling. And I I had made this TV show and I really wanted people to see it, but I didn't want them to just like see it on the internet. I wanted them to see it on the big screen, like huge, projected, loud. And I started submitting it to like, I don't know, gallery calls and museums and stuff. And just like, it was just like nothing, no response. This is like, and that's when I kind of started to learn about like the wall that was up against video artists and other artists and the way that like industry keeps things separate. You know, music is separate than film, that's separate than paintings, which is just completely ridiculous. They all feed each other. There's music in films, there's storyboarding for films, like everything is coming together. So I started to think about like, I was like, what's the difference between my work and the work in this um, city gallery? And the answer was that that work had a frame around it. So that was like a big moment for me where I was like, oh, if you put something in a frame, it like contextualizes it and gives it a little bit more power, at least within this industry of art. So I proposed putting my films into a frame, and I put them into a frame that was the Arboretum made out of cardboard. And behind me on the wall, the movies were projected, and I got a show at this place called Gallery for Culture. It's a Seattle city-run space. They're like a granting organization, and they have a gallery in their building. And I built 400 lily pads and wove together like tons of cellophane water. And that's the boat that I used to film things in that like it's actually a boat. I filmed all the episodes in it. And I also built this dock out of pallets. I like drove around the neighborhoods, collected pallets, and like tore them apart, rebuilt them to make them really nice. And we had a wheelchair ramp up to them, and it was like accessible. And so from like 9 to 5 every day when For Culture was open, you could go in and sit on this dock and you could watch my show. And it was kind of this like huge breakthrough moment for me, just in terms of lots of things, in terms of community, in terms of like being recognized within my community as an artist finally, which was simultaneously great and like being also I was like, I've been doing this the whole time. It's just you're seeing me differently, which is fine. It's how it is. But um the show was a hit. And when I say it was a hit, it went 3 or 4 other places. So after it left for Culture, it went to the Bumbershoot Arts Festival. They gave me my own tent. And then I was able to sneak 10 bands into this huge rock festival, or like not rock festival, huge music festival in Seattle. And I like programmed my own bands within this festival and like snuck a bunch of performers in every day to play in my stage, which was really fucking fun. So people did amazing things. And you could go and sit on the dock again. Again, it was totally accessible. It was awesome. Okay, then the show went to Cornish College, and then it became something else. And what it became was a summer adventure. The videos finally like had enough on their own to go to the Henry Art Gallery test site, and they were projected in this tent that was part of summer field studies. And they were like, the gallery or the gallery was like, "Do you want to have an event with your stuff?" And I was like, "Sure." What I want to do is I want to have a music show in the Arboretum where we film with like 10 bands, and I want the participants who come to the show to have to get to the bands by waterway. So um we rented like 100 canoes from the University of Washington Arboretum, and it was free, and like 300 people came, and some people brought their own flotillas. And I made this map that wasn't public, but this is like where it started and where it ended. And um, these were where the bands needed to be at certain times to play. And then all these people came, and it was a wildly chaotic adventure, but it was really fun. And so I led them around the Arboretum and people played songs. It was primarily acoustic. Some people had tiny amps. Okay, so um, that's like part one. Boating with Clyde was kind of like this big arc in my life of figuring out that like the only difference between me and the wall between me and the gallery was like that there was a frame around my art, the art. So I started to use that idea to like propel myself forward by putting like giant installation frames around things to get more gallery shows. Um, Sorry, this is a real ramble, but one of the things that came through the pipeline was the city of Seattle was building mass transit. And for 4 years, they had a giant hole in the center of the city. And they had this red wall around it that was like one huge city block. And they divided the wall up amongst artists. And so an animation group that I was part of got a section of the wall for 4 years. And so I was able to animate on this wall for 6 months. I chose to paint it with chalkboard paint and then animate in chalk. I made a music video for a band called The Thermals on this wall. It was really hard because the sun was, you could only animate from like before noon because after noon the sun sat behind the wall. It rained a lot during that time. It's huge. But the video turned out amazing. I'm really proud of it. I had a ton of help. The budget was like $0.3 and uh it was an incredible feat of animators collaborating. We also did some shots in homes for the video too. Okay, so that was like a sidestep into public art. That was my first like public art project. And again, just like along the way, like I will say like this was all just like community-based work. Like the gallery was a community space. That wall was like a public space. And yeah, so I'm going to transition now to talking about Torrey Pines. In 2013, I started to make a feature film called Torrey Pines. It's autobiographical. It's about growing up with my mom who's schizophrenic. That's my grandma in the shot. And spending some time with my grandma. Um, I had made, I don't know, probably like 50 music videos at this point and learned some things about animation. Like, I'm by no means a superior animator. Like, I am always curious about like trying the next technique and less curious about like perfecting one style. So, uh, with this film, um, Kickstarter was like brand new, and I kickstarted $40,000 to make this movie. And I was able to quit my job for 1 year, um, and hire a second animator, my friend Chris Leaney, who had just graduated from like a digital animation school, and he was really ready to do some hands-on paper animation. And we had six helpers, six interns, and each of them would come 1 day a week. And we turned my bedroom into an animation studio, and it was awesome, and it was awful, and it was wonderful. And that's the studio. Behind me is my bed. Um, there was paper scraps everywhere for 3 years. My poor roommates were definitely not consenting to have an animation studio in the house, but they were kind. And we had this desk here with two seats at it. So I would be at the multiplane on the right, Chris would be in the middle seat, and then we would have one intern working 1 day a week on certain parts of the film, building puppets. So that's me and Chris. That was like, day three when we were still super energized. It's our friend Dina. Something really exciting about working on a big project with like a set group of people is like you get to know what they're really good at. And Dina was really good at foliage. And so she would come in and just make like tons of plants for the film. And um, other folks were really good at like regional or geographic things. So they would make like buildings and specific things like specific to a particular region that they were familiar with. This is the crew of the soundtrack. Up top is the Beaconettes. They're a choir from Seattle. They are like an award-winning choir, and they always win the Christmas Carol contest. And they wrote specific music for the film, like choral alternate Star Trek themes. And yeah, so this is a photo we took from like probably 3 weeks into or 2 weeks into recording the soundtrack. It's like we got to get a group photo. This is by no means everyone, but it's our core crew. Okay, so then what happened was we made this movie. It was crazy. It took like 3 years to make, and in 2016, it was done. We were like, okay, it's time to premiere it. So we premiered it at the Seattle Gay and Lesbian Film Festival at the time, and um, the film had a live score with like 24 people playing music in front of the screen and doing live Foley. The film has no dialogue, so it's a little bit easier to do that with no dialogue. And then we took it on tour for 2 months that turned into 2 years with a live band. So this is opening night at the Egyptian Theater in Seattle. Just getting set up. This is our show in Marfa, Texas. This is a show in Vermont. Every night was a totally different place. It'd be like a huge movie theater, or like the Canadian Animation Society, or this homemade museum in Vermont, or a house in LA. Just Kimmy Dawson singing her part as Whitney Houston, Gal Palace in Los Angeles. We met up with a lot of great comics artists along the way, like Jason Lutz and his family. And then we got to go to Japan. So, all of this said, like again, community is the theme. Uh, I was lucky enough to know the folks who ran the Gay and Lesbian Film Festival. And we were doing a test screening of the film, and I was like, you should come watch a test screening. Like I was like, I know I'm going to submit it. Like, I don't want to put pressure on you to like have it be opening night or anything. Just come and see the film, see if you want to screen it. So they came, and then they were like, we want it to be opening night. So, um, from there though, like we were rejected from like most film festivals. Like, spent the money, submitted to all the major film festivals. No, the answer is no. So all of those shows that we booked on that tour were like Facebook. And it was like me and my bandmates, Zach and Jacob, using Facebook to book shows, like, and reaching out to places we had played before, house shows, like animation societies, art galleries. Um, so after we did that, though, like people started reaching out to us, and we got to go on a UK tour. And then this amazing person in Japan who organizes like kind of the independent animation film festival reached out and was like, "Do you want to come and do the show there?" So I was able to go with my roommate Jacob, and we played two live shows, and then they kept selling out. So then they did like a bunch of shows with the pre-recorded score. Anyway, uh, there's a million more photos from that, but that's like a whole world of stories. But um, that's the cliff notes. Okay. All the while, I was also making art shows that were slowly creeping into like um university spaces. So this is the Evergreen State College, and they asked me if I wanted to do a retrospective. So like if you look at this photo, you can see like a wall in the back that's like the lily pads from the Voting with Clyde show. And you can see like some little cardboard TVs that have iPads in them with all the music videos I've made and some large format comics from other shows. Um, so this was like a retrospective show, and we did Torrey Pines live there. And after all this time, I kind of like started to go back to comics again. I don't know, comics are like such a gentle sport for me. It's like nice to like when I can finally get to that place of just drawing and not trying to animate them or make music. I also started making a lot of screen printed posters and hanging them up all over town, especially during Pride Month in Seattle. And eventually, I started drawing a comic series about tour. It's called Merch and Destroy. And I was asked by the local newspaper, The Stranger, to like pitch a series. And I was like, oh, I'd like to draw a series about tour. So I started to draw some photos of real life events from tour. Most of these take place in England. Okay, so coming back to the frame. Um, yeah, I'd been drawing these comics, and once again, I was like, how do I get these comics into other spaces? Boom, put a frame on it. It's a little more complicated than that, but in general, this is just made out of cardboard. I love cardboard frames. I love making cardboard things. It's wonderful. Uh, this comic show turned into a huge art installation. I built a life-size tour van and gear and merch and fantasy instruments. This is all just cardboard and India ink and hot glue. And then I built a life-size green room that you could go in and hang out backstage at the show. And this was at the Bellevue Arts Museum. The green room was like super gnarly, and the Bellevue Arts Museum had a teen program, and like we invited the teens to come draw on the walls. In addition to having like a bunch of friends help draw on the walls. Uh, you could pick up the beers and pretend to drink them and pose with them and sit on the couch. The Bellevue Arts Museum used the walls of the green room to promote things, and people did not like it. People were so mad. They were really angry. Yeah, but that happened. After that show, part of that show was like all these fantasy instruments, and so my friend Darius and I had a fantasy instruments guitar store pop up where you could come and check out the fantasy instruments, and people could play guitars really loudly, just do a lot of soloing in the space. It was very chaotic. Um, as you can see, the cardboard inspiration continued, and in 2020, my house where I'd lived for 10 years got illegally evicted and had to move all of my stuff out of it, and it was awful. But I did end up with like a ton of cardboard. And so I got asked to be in a group show at the Bellevue Arts Museum, and it was like kind of large format objects. So I was like, I want to make a tree out of this cardboard. So I did. And it was really fun. It's just cardboard and India ink again. And then the tree traveled places. Oops. Wait. Yep. This is all part of it. Okay. Hold your thoughts on the tree. But sidebar, while all this was happening, I was also making a feature film called Even Hell Has Its Heroes about the band Earth. And I had started shooting it in 2018. It took 5 years to film, and I worked with the band to film them in various locations around the Pacific Northwest and went on tour with them down to Austin as well. And this is like just one of the posters for it. But what happens is, once again, how do you get your films or like comics or things that don't really fit into galleries into galleries? You make them into prints. So put a frame on it. Um, I printed out stills that I really liked from the film, and I talked to a local gallery and had a show there. Also, I put the log in it because it was slightly related. And also, I needed somewhere to put the log because it was huge and I had nowhere to put it. These are some of the stills from the film. Maybe like a year after that, the Seattle Art Fair asked if I wanted to do something, and I was like, yeah, I have this log. And so I expanded upon the log and put like a forest ranger station situation around it. And on the backside of this log is like a timeline of my own life. And I brought that down for the weekend. And eventually, the city of Shoreline asked if they could show the Earth artwork at the very depressing third floor gallery next to like the place where people go to meet judges for their like drunk driving tickets and stuff. So I hung very depressing artwork in the hallways, and this too could be you if you put a frame around it. In conclusion, put a frame on it. Thank you. That concludes the lecture about community, putting a frame on it. Yeah, all of that said, like all of that possible with community. Nothing about that was like without connection to others and other help, other people helping. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that beautiful talk. That was really uh,
Thanks.
wonderful. My only regret is that some of the images move so fast. I
Sorry.
couldn't linger, but so much juicy stuff. If people have questions, you can pop them in the chat here, or if you want to like do a little like raise hand emoji or something, you could unmute yourself and ask whatever works for you. Um,
Yeah, no pressure.
it's a no
Mhm.
pressure environment.
Yeah.
I wrote down a number of questions, and I'm wondering which I should ask first. I think, well, one thing I guess is there's some sweet comments here in the chat. Um,
Yeah.
uh, what is the desire to show in a gallery? Like if you have all these other ways of showing things.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think yeah, that's a great question. Um, I think like just being working class and like trying to find ways to like support your my art in passive like in more passive income essentially like having multiple tracks open instead of just like I'm doing this job today and this job pays me X amount of money. If it's like if I'm doing this job today and it pays me this much but I could also put prints in a gallery and sell them, that would be helpful. um Also just like I don't dislike galleries. I think that they are like servicing a specific need or desire within society. And I also, I don't dislike museums. I just like they're all so separate. I dislike the separation between them. And so I guess more my desire is to just like cross those thresholds and be like, all artists potentially do belong in all of these spaces.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. It
Mhm.
might just be like a bit of stubbornness, honestly. Just being like, why is it so gatekeepy? What's going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it does seem like you really respond to different kind of constraints and limitations as like a personal challenge in a cool way, or like, and also like how
Yeah.
space is really interesting, like thinking of the
Mhm.
boating and working with that, those resources and then making the show and then put like building out the essentially the water and the plants, out of these other materials. It's like each different kind of setting or limitation kind of generated this other work of art or
Yeah.
extension of the art. And I was also thinking about that in terms of like how you said tech informed some of your work, like thinking about 90s burning CDs or like working with certain kind of like formats. And then I think you were talking about GoPros for the boating show, and then using Facebook to book shows and things like that, just like working with these different things. And I'm wondering with like technology now, like going in all these kind of blasting in all these different directions that are a little less like tangible, maybe.
Yeah.
Do those interest you, or what is your what do you feel like your kind of like your kind of constraints or parameters or technological things right now that are kind of informing your work?
It's a good question. Right now, I'm very informed by returning to cut paper and glue and scissors. Um, I'm not super interested in like going deeper into tech. Uh, One thing that comes to mind for the last question is one reason I wanted to get into galleries and stuff is because it's a huge space and I love making large format objects and it's really hard to do that like at DIY spaces or like in your house. And I was like, just please just someone give me a huge room to build something giant in because I love a large format object. So that's another reason that I kind of pushed across that boundary. Um, but yeah, I think, honestly, these days I live in the forest and it's great. And I like have reverted to just like, today I only talk to a deer and my dog. And I'm just like really in the paper, scissors, glue, paint category of life. So I think I'm probably drifting further away. But at the same time, I did just watch an amazing like a After Effects tutorial about creating like water patterns and I was like, wow, this is just mind-bending. So I think I really appreciate like many of the tracks and try to incorporate the tools that like are functioning for the project. Yeah.
Um, we have a comment here in the chat. I'm going to read it aloud because the
Yeah.
recording can't read the chat over here.
Mhm.
Jen says, so I need a lot of permission to end up making things, and sometimes the structure of school is what helps me actually sit down to create. I wondered whether you had gone to school at all, or you have managed to feel like you were allowed to make all these things for other reasons. How did you discover that you had permission to make these awesome things? Thank you for this lovely talk and sharing your warm and welcoming vibe.
Cool. Thanks, Jen. Great question. Yeah, I did go to community college for 2 years, and then I went to Western Washington University for um 3 more years. But I just got a BA and mostly it was in like pot smoking and not attending class and not doing a good job and not showing up. I went to this school that is part of Western called Fairhaven that is like design your own major. It's what Evergreen State College is based on. So it's like it's really loose. It worked for me because I shouldn't have gone to college yet. I was just like smoking pot and watching The Simpsons. Like I shouldn't have paid to do that, but nonetheless, I did get scholarships to do that. Um, I think generally my motivation to make things lies in curiosity. I want to know how things work. I want to, and when I say how things work, I don't just mean like machines. Like I've been spending all week thinking about how the ocean makes the patterns on itself, on the like what are water patterns and how do you replicate them and can you replicate them and like how do I think I could spend my whole life trying to animate water and never understand it. It's something I come back to project after project. I'm like, I would love to spend like a year with Miyazaki just watching him draw water and be like, how do you do it? So for myself, it's like about finding like the quiet space to find out like what I'm curious about and then follow that rabbit hole without perhaps without a destination in mind. That's probably like the best thought I can give you on that. Just yeah, take the pressure off. We're all gonna die. Take the pressure off. Enjoy the day. Enjoy the ocean. Enjoy the pattern on the water. And then maybe try and draw it or something. Yeah.
That's an awesome answer. We have we have a little hand, and then we have Randy had asked a question. I think I'll go to that, and then I'll go to the hand there. Randy asks, many artists agree with you about galleries being gatekeepy. I've been asking galleries lately just about alternate hanging methods as opposed to everything having to be in a frame. Some places are loosening up about it. I also just love just working with paper and cardboard. You can do so much. It's magical. Your work is great.
Thanks. I totally agree. My last show at a gallery was what did I do? I did pins in the walls and clips. It was a screen print show, and I made like 20 prints of 20 of each print, and then we clipped them together so when the doors opened to the space, they ruffled. They were like posters on the wall and they ruffled, and it was a really fun experience. Um, yeah, maybe I should clarify and say like when I say put a frame on it, a frame can be many things. Like I think you just have to convince the person that it's like a hypothetical frame, a metaphorical frame. Whatever your frame is, just go sell it.
Sweet. Zach, you had your hand up. Here, Randy says, I've been working on that.
Yeah, great. Get in touch if you want to talk frames, Randy. Just find me on Instagram. I'm always happy to talk metaphorical frames. I'm being real.
Um, let's see. Zach, did you want to ask your question?
Yes. I think
Hi, Zach.
we might echo though if you don't mute. Okay, great. Hi, Clyde. That was
Hi, Zach.
amazing.
Thanks.
Uh it was so great to take that walk down memory lane because I got to see so many of those shows and things that just yeah, very nostalgic. But yeah, I wanted to ask I first like
Oh,
um before we became friends, I got to just like listen to your music a lot and just love your songwriting so much. And it's amazing. Like, I feel like one thing I was just thinking about is like you write such good songs that they turn into feature-length films, which is kind of like not the case for most people. So I'm kind of curious about like because Torrey Pines was a song first and then it became a movie. And I think that what an incredible journey and like testament to like the like interconnectivity of all these like art forms that like a song, which is like 2.5 minutes long, can then become like a full length movie, like with no words. And then also I guess that's the case too with Our Forbidden Country. Maybe it's not fully based on the song, but it was a song of yours that I know.
it's
And
happening again. It's happening.
it's happening again. And I
Yeah.
wanted to also ask you, well, about that, but also about Our Forbidden Country and where that's at and how that's going.
Okay, so this week I've been working on like the opening scenes, which is like a ferry boat coming into the city of Seattle in 1979. And it's this ferry boat. Um, but yeah, so the film title is based off of a song from my band Your Heart Breaks, and this song is called Our Forbidden Country, which is based on some poetry in a book called A Restricted Country by Joan Nestle, an expatriated lesbian Jewish poet from who lives in Australia now. Um, uh, the let's see, the song came first, or the poetry of Joan Nestle came from the 1950s and 60s and 70s. Then I wrote a song. Then we made a music video, and now the music from that record is kind of informing this feature. And just this week, like I've been animating the fairy, and I just started putting music from that record onto the ferry, and I was like, it's working. Like it was such an exciting moment because I had been thinking about like, oh, what are we gonna do to soundtrack this? And I was like, I just had that moment again that like you and I and Jacob had where we were like, we'll just use your heartbreak songs. And so I think it's gonna happen again. Yeah, I love like the idea that everything is just like one big project. Like your whole life is one big project. There's like things come up like little waves, but it's all, how could you disconnect from the thing you did last? I don't know. Maybe some people can. Can you? Do you?
I don't know. I've none of my songs have ever turned into a movie before.
But you like do watercolors, you do, you do other visual formats. So I feel as if you journey in those that web as well.
Yeah, that's true. I do. I love that the way that these yeah, they're like a song can be a painting or a speech.
Totally. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. Mm. Thanks.
Sorry, we have another question here in the chat from Neil. Great presentation. Put a frame on it. Reminds me a bit of the Portlandia comedy show.
Yes.
On it. It is true. It is true. Presentation is 90% of the battle. As someone who's put on many hundreds of live music shows at DIY venues in my various homes in SF and LA, I somewhat regret not having combined it with other aspects of my creativity the way you did. I think it has everything to do with how eager a person is to succeed in one area. I had some early experiences with success and also observing how the art world functions and kind of decided against it. But enough about me. Your hard work and joy are evident in everything you've done. I'm just curious about how many obstacles you encountered um, along the way. I sort of lost my little, where is it? Oh,
You
encountered
got it.
along the way. Not a question per se, but wondering if anything comes to mind.
Okay, yes, definitely put a bird on it. Yes. Um, Obstacles, plenty. Uh, Self-doubt, uh, credit card debt, moldy houses, flooded bedrooms, yeah, situational living situations that are tricky, freezing winters. These are all the things that cross my mind. But okay, there's like seven thoughts there. Yes, I love like when house shows also show movies. Like some of my favorite things to do when I lived in Seattle were like play the show, but just show a few films between bands or something and be like, well, I'm playing the show, but just show up with my projector and show a few films in the living room and then the bands would play again. I love cross cross contaminating shows like that. It's not too late for you, Neil. You can do it. Um, yeah, I think just the challenge that many of us face, just earned income, working classness, is always a challenge. Like being able to set aside time to do your own work. Um, I think I rotate through these different avenues of work, like music and art and animation, so that I don't get like too deep into one and hit those walls of like burnout or I don't know, gatekeepy stuff. try to keep it a little bit light and fun and keep it in the curiosity zone. And it's hard though. I think like self-doubt is a big piece of artists. It's hard to fight that voice off every day when like you go out in the world and people are like, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And I'm like, I mean, I cut paper and made a ferry boat today. People are like, I'm a lawyer. And you're like, cool, that's great. Like two different planets of existence. Same planet though. So I feel like that's a tricky thing.
Um, if people have other questions, put them in the chat. I have a couple more myself. One is you had mentioned really briefly that to you comics were a gentle sport.
Oh yeah, for me, not for others. I know they're really hard and
Well,
challenging.
just that you
Yeah.
maybe like I'm curious just to hear, since it's the New York Comics and Picture Story Symposium, like maybe
Yeah.
just what kinds of ideas end up if like certain kinds of ideas or things end up in certain mediums or how comics has kind of been a place for you or in thinking of it as a gentle sport. It can be both hard and a gentle sport, I think. Um,
Yeah, for sure. Uh, for me, comics is a place to just like reflect on experiences. I I don't think I ever try and draw things that didn't happen to me. It's more of like a documentation, um, or like trying to interpret a feeling of an event or something like that. Try to interpret a feeling of a community or a night or a show, or try to remember something, a note to remember something really funny, like some ridiculous thing a band did in the middle of their set, because that'll drift off otherwise. That's kind of how I live in comics. I always used them on tour because it was this place where like maybe you have like a half an hour downtime at the merch table while the other band's playing, and like that was my place to just draw or sketch or watercolor. And I would come home with these like really elaborate like diaries of like what had happened. But it's like just this like limited time sport where I can dive in. And so I'm not I've never been like a long format comics maker, and I know that's a whole job. Yeah.
the whole thing.
The whole
But
thing. I couldn't draw something that I had to imagine if my life depended on it. I really need like photographic evidence to draw from.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, well, it's interesting. Like I've only made short films. The idea of making a feature animation seems totally wild to me, but you seem to be able to fully stretch out in that medium.
Yeah, I love a long format film. I just don't enjoy short films very much. Um, I don't enjoy making them. I want lots of space.
Yeah.
Just like I want to build big things. I want lots of space and time to stretch out. Yeah.
Um, if someone wanted to see your films, where can
Yeah. They're on Vimeo. I have a Vimeo page, and my website's just clydepetersen.com. You can see all this stuff over there. It'll take you on a journey.
Okay, cool. And is
Yeah.
boating with Clyde still up?
Yeah, it's on Vimeo. It's a whole
Okay.
channel.
Okay, great.
There's
Cool.
a lot of hours there. Yeah.
We have another comment in the chat here from Jen. I have an artist friend who is quite established and a matriarch who claims doubt as her artistic methodology. She calls
Oh,
herself a good enough artist, like D.W. Winnicott's Good Enough Mother, which Alison Bechdel talks about in her Mother comic.
that's awesome. I love that so much. Yeah, I mean, you're only really in competition with yourself to make the thing that your brain wants to make, right? Like, that's my challenge is like if I can see something in my brain, like how can I get it out? If I can get that, oh my God, that's a major victory. It's good. It's good enough.
Um, and in terms of what you're working on now, so you are saying you just dove into um, the
Yeah.
feature. Could you talk a little bit more about it and how it's going? It sounds like you're working on water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I started making the film in 2018. I worked on it for a solid year and then I had to sit it down. And the whole thing's storyboarded. Like I have 10 minutes animated, but now I have 11 minutes after this week. And that's a big deal. So yeah, I'm just going scene by scene. I'm on scene 3 right now, and I'm starting to think about the soundtrack and the folks who are going to do it and what it's going to be like and what it's going to feel like. And it's all cut paper, um, hand painted. My process is that I start with like blank white Bristol paper and I paint it with a flat children's paint, fully edible, non-toxic, and comes by the gallon and really inexpensive. And it dries really matte, which I like. The downside is it's can get a little scratched up, which I don't like. Pro tip, if you are animating paper, paint the back of your puppet black so that it doesn't reflect on the glass. That's your pro tip for this talk. Um, but yeah, just trying to get into it. I've been hustling all year long, just making like music video after music video for bands, just trying to pay off some debt. And I was like, I think I want to take a month and just work as much as I can. So I'm 5 days into that and it's feeling good. It's a
Yeah.
challenge, it's just you versus your brain
Yeah.
all day long.
Is this
Yeah.
film going to be dialogue free like Torrey Pines, or is there?
I don't know yet. It doesn't have a script. It is dialogue free right now, but I do have questions about it. We'll see. I kind of love a dialogue free experience.
Yeah. Same.
So, yeah.
Cool.
Was recently talking to a friend who's an author, and she was like, I'm in a fight with my publisher because I'm writing a feelings book, but she wants a plot book. And I was like, oh, I make feelings movies. Cool. Like, that's good to know, There's plot movies, there's plot stories, and there's feeling stories, and I definitely am enjoying making feelings stories.
Yeah.
Si silent musical ones. So, yeah.
Um, and I guess just I think the last question I've written down is um just in terms of like if you had to give a little piece of advice to someone just thinking so much about community, and you said you live like on an island and you just talked to a deer today, like if you're in a place where you're trying to establish it as an artist, I don't know, are there any like
Yeah.
first steps towards that or things you recommend?
Yeah, I do. Okay. Um, some of my greatest experiences in getting like into spaces uh have resulted in one, reading local arts publications, like reading interviews with people that you don't know. Um, here's an example. There was a arts paper in Seattle called City Arts for a while. It featured this person named Tarika Waters, incredible large scale installation artist. I had no idea who she was. This amazing person. And one day I was like walking downtown and I just like walked by her. And then I was like, are you Tarika Waters? And then she was like, yeah. And then we just started talking and we were outside of her apartment and her stairwell was a gallery. And she had a DIY gallery in her stairwell and had it opening every Thursday. And I was like, I love your art. And I was like, and then she was like, are you Clyde? Because we were in the same magazine. And she was like, you should have a show here. So, in conclusion, read interviews with people in your city and meet them. Um, that being said, like, I feel like the way I got the Bellevue Arts Show was that I went to a party that some artists had put together to invite the new director of the museum to meet artists. Like, someone just straight up DIY'd a party and was like, hey man, come on over. I'm gonna introduce you to about like 25 artists. And I just like met the dude and later I just like hit him up and was like, I'm making this giant van. Can I show it at the museum? And he was like, yeah. And it was right after Simon Hanselman had a show there too. So it was like epic back to back, like insanity. Um, but that said, like you can host a meet and greet for directors of museums, for galleries. Like you could do that. You could just be like, I'm having to get together with 25 artists and I want you to come meet these people in your community. So I think that's my advice is just like continue to connect however you feel comfortable,
Mhm.
whether it's just like reading an interview and like if you feel some kinship with someone like reaching out or going all out and like making the cheese plate, you know, but doing it like authentically, not like I think there's a level of schmooze that's possible, but then like you could just be like, I'm actually authentically very interested in you as a person. I'm interested in making a crazy show at this space. Like, how's about it? You know? That's my advice, I guess. I
Great.
hope I hope it works.
Um, well, I think unless anyone has a last minute question they want to pop in there, I think we are at a end point. This was
Thanks so
such a
much.
special talk and very inspiring and fun and makes me want to see all the work of yours that I haven't seen and watch the complete boating adventures.
Yeah.
Really, really wonderful talk. Thank you so much, Clyde.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Lily. Thanks for everyone for coming today. Thanks, Zach, for showing up for all of Torrey Pines tours. Thanks, Jody, who's here today for printing the Earth photos for the gallery. I see you. Yeah, get in touch if you have any questions. Feel free to connect.
Jen says, come to Vancouver.
BC? I will. I do often. I have Skybridge.
And I want to just plug the following talk will be next Tuesday or Tuesday of next week. It'll be November 11th with another of my uh, fave image makers, artists, Molly Colleen O'Connell. Um, and she has a very promising title to her talk, Spelunking the Clown's Crevasse. So do not miss if you want to know what that entails. Um, so, okay, thank you everyone so much for coming, and thanks again, Clyde, for this
Thank
great.
you. Bye, y'all.